afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock in time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope your weekend is off to a good start. Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, Dan Lobby, on which way he feels the Browns might be leaning relative to their quarterback competition.
I think if they had to lean one way, I think they'd almost have to lean towards Shedeur Sanders, just because he's the guy who's played the most recently. And when we talk about Deshaun Watson, I do think it's just important to remember when the season starts, have been almost 2 years since he played a football game. He's had 3 major surgeries, shoulder surgery, 2 Achilles surgeries. Like that is all very unprecedented to be able to come back from that stuff and be anything close to what he was when the Browns gave up those 3 first-round picks and thought they were getting a potential top 5 quarterback. That said, I do think it is interesting that Jimmy Haslam left the door open and did speak highly enough of Deshaun Watson, because Jimmy Haslam has really kind of been the lone truth teller over and over again when it comes to this football team and where they are in their process and kind of how they're building this thing out. And so I think his acknowledgement that, a year ago when he said big swing and a miss and it felt like, okay, this thing's over, it's just a matter of time, I do think him leaving that door open for Deshaun Watson is significant. But that said, just because Shedeur has been the guy who's played the most recently, he's the guy that we know can go out there and play a full football game right now, I think you'd have to give the edge to him.
Yeah, and again, you got to look at what the benefit is. There's not really a benefit to playing Shedeur or Deshaun Watson. If Deshaun Watson plays and plays well, do you really think they're going to sign him? Doesn't seem like that's realistic. Daryl Ryder, Browns beat reporter for 92.3 The Fan, talking about that draft day trade with the Jaguars a year later.
I think just from the trade aspect of it and the player and the value, I think that Andrew Berry ended up fleecing Jacksonville. I mean, you did get 2 first-round picks for one for who was now going to be a cornerback. Unfortunately, Travis got hurt last year and wasn't able to play out his rookie season. But the fact that they're going into his sophomore year, and let's also be fair about this, I think that him coming off that injury is what led to this decision-making process for Jacksonville to have him focus mostly on one side of the ball and leave whatever contribution he'll get an opportunity to make offensively to the trick plays. Well, I don't know that that's the smartest thing, because if you're putting him on the field offensively, you're kind of tipping your hand, to teams that, maybe you're going to run some trickeration there. So I do think, though, that Andrew Berry won that trade ultimately. As you recall, this time last year, Berry talked up Travis Hunter significantly, led a lot of us to believe that was going to be their guy at number 2. So word to the wise, next week when we hear from Andrew Berry, if he is very effusive in his praise of any player, that probably means that the Browns are not interested.
Well, you take everything at face value with the draft. Field Yates, ESPN's draft analyst, talking about who he thinks the Browns should draft with the 6th pick in the draft.
I would lean towards Carnell Tate or Francis Mauigoa. Some of those are archetypes with Andrew as well, right? We know that Andrew has traditionally valued premium positions, young players, athletic testers. Now, you could say Carnell Tate, 4.53, not good enough. If the Browns' 40 time on the handheld was good enough, that will supersede the electric time that was 4.53 at the combine.
The only thing I have to say relative to 40 times on wide receivers in the draft is Anthony Schwartz, and that should be enough for Browns fans. We'll talk plenty of Browns coming up with Garrett Bush as well as Lance Reisland and Casey Kinnamon. All right, let's turn our attention to the Cavs. ESPN's national NBA analyst Brian Windhorst on teams with the most pressure heading into the postseason. This is from ESPN's 5 Good Minutes with Windy.
I actually believe, just in general, if you were to do sort of a pressure meter and you looked at teams across the board, the Celtics have a bit of a free roll, right? Like obviously they're now considered the favorite. So maybe that's a little bit more, but like if the Celtics, this was sort of being viewed as a low pressure season. The Pistons have not won this group hasn't won a series. So they've been number 1 for a while. Again, if they lose in the first or second round, it'll be a disappointment, but this group has never won a playoff series together.
Right.
The Knicks are very, very invested in this season, and the Cavs are very, very invested in this season. All the teams behind them, like Philly, the whole team's been hurt. Mm-hmm. Maybe at the beginning of the year they were hoping to get the conference finals. They're trying to stay out of the play-in. you can make the case that, Cavs and Knicks. And I think if you look at the West, the Thunder have won the championship already. The Spurs are in a free roll. This is their first time in there as a group. The Lakers are injured. I guess the Nuggets to a certain extent, but they already have a championship. It's not like anybody's doubting them. The Rockets are in this group for the first time. I think you make the case that the Knicks and the Cavs have the two highest amounts of pressure in this postseason across the board.
And the Cavs has even ratcheted up because they traded Darius Garland, got James Harden, an older guy, so they're going all in for the playoffs. Let's turn our attention now to the Guardians. Guardians heading to Atlanta, and it's been a great start. Split the first 4 games with the Mariners, took series from the Dodgers, took a series from the Cubs, took a series from the Royals as well. Lone addition to the Guardians' offense has been Rhys Hoskins. Now 5 doubles in just 27 at-bats, hitting just under 260. Stephen Vogt with what Hoskins brings to this young lineup.
Yeah, Rhys is a professional hitter. The patience, the lack of chase, the ability to, think along with pitchers, and the ability to go through the Rolodex of what he sees. And, a lot of those at-bats, he's ready to go, and swings at the right pitches. And just having him in the middle of the order really makes the lineup longer. And, he's getting on base unbelievably. And like a day like today, three doubles, that's pretty cool.
So you hit him in the middle of that lineup, and now you're starting to go with him and DeLauder added to Kwan and Ramirez. Guardians again open up a 3-game weekend series against the Braves. Tonight's pitching matchup, Slade Ciccone for the Guardians, Bryce Elder for the Braves. We're going to step aside, take a quick time up. Garrett Bush up first on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio lottery. Put a little flag in your day. Put a little flag in your day.
Browns are up first on Sports4CLE. Longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi on a possible draft day trade between the Cowboys and the Browns. This from ESPN Cleveland.
The Dallas Cowboys, who own pick number 12 and pick number 20, the Browns trading 6 and 39 for 12 and 20. What are your thoughts on that? Are you buying that could be in the conversation of a trade back? And would you do that?
Well, first of all, it would make it convenient for the Browns to drop down to 12.
Okay.
Right? So, we've talked about offensive tackle being their top priority, and there isn't one at 6 that you feel good about taking, but you'll feel better if you get them at 12 plus an additional pick. So that makes sense. I just don't think it's enough for me to make that trade.
Okay.
Theoretically, if you had 12, 20, and 24,
you'd have 3 first-rounders in this draft, yeah.
but that would make it easier then to trade out one of them into the second round, trade back into the second to get an extra pick in 2027.
Let's welcome in G. Bush from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show as well as the Barbershop. G. Bush, I would not make that trade. Not if I got to put 39 in it. I give you a 4th round maybe, but I wouldn't do. You got to give me something to get into 6. You're moving up 6 spots. That's elite there.
In this draft, if you tell me, most people would tell you that there's not. Let's say, for instance, there's not more than 3 or 4 elite players in this draft. And one of them you're not going to get because they're a quarterback. So now you talk about a couple, 3 more elite players past that. Why would I be in the business of dropping back and taking less talented players just so you can move up and get elite players? Like, let me get this straight here. The Browns are a team that need good players. The Browns are a team that need to add great players. The Browns are a team that don't have that much capital outside in terms of free agent dollars, in terms of whether or not they're going to be able to attract certain people in trades or free agency. So why would you if you know that is a problem for you, why would you be in the business of always not performing good enough and getting a top 5 pick? You were at number 2 last year and you traded down. Well, this year you got back in the top 10 again because you were bad, and now you're trading down again with the Cowboys to get what? Like, for me, I don't. If you tell me, can I get 2 solid players or 1 blue chip player? Man, give me 2. Give me the blue chip player. I don't want 2 solid players. Like, don't give me, this guy. If you tell me that I could get a guy that's going to be a serviceable starter for a couple of years, that's not what we in the business of doing. And one thing that we got to get to as Cleveland Browns fans is the love of picks are great. I get that we like picks, and I know accumulating assets. But think about this. They told us the same thing last year. Last year was, this quarterback class is going to be monsters. So Sellers, Klubnik, Drew Aller, Nussmeier, Arch Manning, that's going to be the class. And then it turns out none of them, and it was a 1 quarterback class. Now you traded your pick last year, worked out. You got 2 first rounds this year, and you don't have a plethora of guys to even choose from. Turns out the tackle class was so-so. The receiver class was so-so. So now this time they're telling you, no. What you need to do is get you a 2027. Figure that out. And I'm like, look, man. Kevin Stefanski thought he had all the time in the world, too, to kind of kick the can down the road and get his quarterback in 27 or 26. Turns out that when you start losing football games, it don't really work that way. If you telling me Andrew Berry is jousting and waiting for 27, he might not even be here in 27. He might want to go ahead and turn his card in and help the head coach that he is tasked with winning right now today and go over the game plan that they said they was going to do in order to get the offense together and turn in the card and take somebody. But I'm not into taking that is a Minimowski deal. Like, I'm not about to give you get a 5th down the line and add with that, but I'm not giving no 39 up for what? No. Mm-mm.
All right, the Athletics draft analyst Dane Brugler talking about Carnell Tate, one of the top receivers in the draft.
What Carnell Tate brings, just the vertical element, winning down the field, but he's also a really controlled route runner in the short to intermediate game as well. He's one of the best sideline receivers that I've scouted, and by that I mean just the ability to work the sidelines, stay in bounds, use that length. So he's bringing in some of those balls back into play because he's so long and uses that catch radius. He doesn't drop the football. I mean, there were last year, there were 168 players in college football that had at least 66 targets. Tate was one of 4 that didn't have a drop. And you look at what he does in contested situations. You look at what he does at every level of the field. And, I get it. He ran a 4.53 in the 40-yard dash, and that was the only athletic testing we have for him. But when you watch the tape and you see just the different elements he brings to your team, and a guy that took a big step from 2024 tape, you feel like he's due for even a bigger step once he gets to the NFL. So, yeah, I do think he's wide receiver 1, and there's a chance he might not even be on the board at 6 if, you look at the Titans at 4 or maybe even a team moving up to go get him. So Tate is a really well-liked prospect.
I hear him. That's the type of receiver I think the Browns need, because that's going to be a guy that gives Jerry Jeudy some space. That's going to be a guy that gives Harold Fannin more space, that gives Quinshon Judkins more space. And I'm a Mekhi Lemon guy. But I hear Dane Brugler, who I respect and I think is really good, and he describes Carnell Tate, and that's what I think the Browns need.
First of all, his demeanor more than anything. He's a professional. He's wise above his years. You don't hear nothing about it. You can have a couple guys in your locker room in terms of your receiving corps that, they want to rock. They're going to be a little, they may be they want a little more attention. You gotta have a little patience with one of them, right? You can do one of them. You can't have 2. You can't have 2 or 3 of them in the same room because it's going to be a nightmare. He's a guy you put in, and Dane is right. When it comes to running his route, he runs all the routes in the route tree. They say he run a 4.53. Well, that 4.53 must be in pads with everything on game day too, because he's running past. He's always, every time you look up, he's behind somebody. By the way, when you talk about the catch radius and everything, some of the catches that he's making, contested catches, are there. Oh, and on the sideline, it ain't 1 foot. He's getting 2 feet in. He's not a body catcher. He's a hands catcher. He plucks the ball out of the sky. He has strong hands. He's a guy who's not going to put the ball on the turf. And the thing that he does that makes it look easy is he's an effortless route runner. He's not doing a bunch of extra wasted motion in and out of the breaks. He's not doing a bunch of extra just spinning in circles. He's decisive. And when you got a guy like that, and I said before, don't overthink it. When you put him on your offense, you're automatically going to be better. It's just about how much better you're going to be. You ain't got to worry about a lot of these things. And for the Cleveland Browns, and when you talk about not investing the type of capital that you need to invest capital like that on a top receiver if you want to get one of those guys. And it sounds like what Dame says is exactly what the doctor ordered for the Browns.
All right, so it kind of relates to what you're talking about. Draft capital spent on wide receivers since 2020. It's in the graph form, and it's from Warren Sharp Football. Jaguars most, Chargers second, Packers third, Panthers fourth, and the Giants. The Browns are 30th, ahead of the Falcons and the Saints, and that's draft capital since 2020. Now, they've swung and missed a number of times in the third round, G. Bush. You've had a speed guy, a possession guy, a big target, and none of them are working out. I'm with you. I think you probably need to invest 2 before the third round that are wide receivers. And I want an easy yards guy like Mekhi Lemon, and I want the guy that I just heard, Dane Brugler, who I think is one of the best draft analysts around, describing Carnell Tate. I think Carnell Tate makes this offense infinite. He's going to make your quarterback better.
If you told me, I've gone, the pendulum swings like this, and we said take 2 offensive linemen and different things like that. And now, listen, I wouldn't be mad at all if you want to go get me a Carnell Tate, and you drop back and say, well, listen, is Denzel Boston available, right? Because yep. Jerry Judy's money is off the books this year. So Jerry Jeudy, they could get off his contract after this year and not have any crazy money invested in him. And so to me, if you want to look at that list right there, and even the crazy part about it is the Browns even made the draft day trade to give the Falcons Julio Jones. And yep. It's ironic that they're behind them, but the Browns have not. If you look at the way the league is run now, you're going to need multiple receivers. It's not about just one over here. And the Browns have been dreadful since the beginning of the franchise. If you look at the all-time leading receivers for the Cleveland Browns, and all of the pictures are in black and white, you know what type of time we in. It ain't even color pictures yet. A couple of them is tight ends, and they weren't even throwing the ball that much back then. So now, if you're telling me that you can get Carnell Tate and you can now already have Harold Fanning Jr., you can go get me another Casey Concepcion, a Chris Bell, you can get me a Omar Cooper, Elijah Surratt somewhere else. Hey, get me one of them dudes, and I got 2 receivers now. All of a sudden, your floor is raised. Now you don't need the quarterback in Shedeur Sanders or Deshaun Watson to be throwing the ball 65 times a game and make pinpoint throws. Now you can actually do what other teams do. Find me some easy yards here on some jet motions or some nice quick reverses, run after catch. Find me a couple of contested catches in the back of the end zone. By the way, when is the last time we had a receiver catch a back shoulder fade in the end zone? Do we even have that in the corner of the end zone? It just seems like all our receivers are under 6 foot with the same size, but a slight frame as Isaiah Bond. Find me a dude that we can get, that we can throw the ball and get us some points. Please, Cleveland Browns. If you do that, it'll make your life a lot easier.
All right, this is from ESPN. It's NFL comps for draft prospects. Kind of an interesting one. So Jeremiah Love, they go Reggie Bush. Caleb Downs, Budda Baker. Mayoga, they go Darnell Wright. Mekhi Lemon, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Carnell Tate, Cooper Kupp, Rashee Rice for Omar Cooper Jr., George Pickens for Tyson, Austin Jackson for Fano, Tyler Guyton. You see Melita for Proctor, Brandon Ayuk for Casey Concepcion. Ooh, that's a little scary. And then Cortland Sutton for Denzel Boston. You give me an Amon-Ra St. Brown, you give me a Cooper Kupp, you give me a Cortland Sutton, I'm a happy man for the Browns.
I'll take that. Ooh, I will take that. Listen, I don't know in what world this happens, but could it be scary? Like if you told me, if I could say, I want Mekhi Lemon and I want Carnell Tate. Now I know you at 24. I'm gonna just tell you this: if I got Carnell Tate, like right now, if I had Carnell Tate and he was there, and I took him at 6, and if Mekhi Lemon gets anywhere close to the 20s, let me just tell you this: if he sniffs 18, 19-ish, that number 24 pick that I got is getting packaged, and I'm aggressive, and I'm going, hey, listen, what you want? I got some stuff down the line for you, what you need to get. In a quarterback, in a class where everybody is trying to stockpile for 27, I feel that there's an opportunity that you can then get back up into that draft and then get you something in 26 that most people is not willing to part, right? Nobody's willing to part with assets because everybody's looking to the future. If he slips anywhere at 18, can you imagine? Now you got Mekhi Lemon and Carnell Tate. Listen, I don't care what else they do. You can draft 17 linemen after that. But to me, I don't know if he'll get there because I think he's just too good of a football player. And I think that most people will not have him falling that low. I think he goes somewhere in the early teens, maybe 13, 14, somewhere in that range. But if he's anywhere close to 20 and he's on the board, I trade up and go take him too.
Yeah, I'm with you. You need playmakers, and those two, I think, are playmakers. And what you need in the first round, you need guys that are going to make the players around them significantly better. And I think both of those guys would do that.
Man, can you imagine if you are a guy, if you are the quarterback, if you are Shedeur Sanders, you're looking around and say, oh my goodness, I got those two. And listen, Harold Fant is still there and Jerry Jeudy is still walking around. Now you got options. You see, look, it's like a Disney movie. It's a whole new world. This of excitement and options for the Cleveland Browns if you got that. I don't want to get too excited because knowing them, they'll probably take a tackle and trade down and get 35 picks in it.
And get a guard.
They'll get a guard with the 6th pick. You be like, I guess.
G. Bush, as always, great stuff, man. Appreciate the time, the insight. Thanks very much.
Appreciate you.
Garrett Bush, make sure you check him out Monday through Friday, 11 to 1, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. On the weekends, make sure you check him out on the Barbershop. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Casey Kinnamon from the Barking Brown and All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Straight ahead, stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I doubt we will be able to pry a 2027 first-round pick away from anybody. So the trade-down scenario on your show yesterday where the Browns trade out of 6 and 39 and receive 12 and 20 sounds like a real possibility. Here's some picks under those parameters from a fan. At number 12, offensive tackle Monroe Freeling, huge upside and a 10-year fit. Number 20, wide receiver Casey Concepcion, smooth, blazing fast, just scores touchdowns and has returnability. At number 24, cornerback Avion Terrell, a better Greg Newsome, can play slot or outside. At 70, guard Emmanuel Pregnon, rock solid, maybe the second or third best guard in the draft. At 107, center Sam Heck, veteran who will be a future starter. And at 145, I went with quarterback Taylon Green, just great upside. Looking forward to hear your thoughts on this. Go Browns!
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from the Barking Browns podcast and the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Casey, I don't know if I make that trade. As a matter of fact, I don't make that trade. I don't think there's a big enough separation if you got to throw 39 in there.
Yeah, and the variance between players between 20 and 80 is not that great to try to accumulate extra picks in this particular draft. But the caller's right as it stands right now. And there's obviously 13 days of runway between now and draft night. But it doesn't look like it's going to be in the cards to obtain a first-round pick for next year's draft, which is the jewel that everyone's going to be chasing when they're trying to trade out this year. But I like the caller's thought process. You know, I like
absolutely.
If I was going to go, if you told me I had 12, 20, and 24, I'm probably going Mekhi Lemon, Caleb Lomu, and then maybe if he slips in the draft, someone like Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, a great value if I can get him at 24. So I think that if you were going to go that route, there's going to be good players to get in those ranges that would suit you. But I'm with you. I think, you know, obviously we have a lot of time between now and the draft. There's going to be a lot of speculation, and teams are putting feelers out there. If nothing else, just to get the public perception of what would be, you know, how people feel about it. But I don't know if Jerry actually pulls the trigger on that trade and gives up 2 first-round picks they just obtained.
You know, the interesting one, Freeling and Concepcion are guys that kind of scare me a little bit just because I think there's a huge variant. Concepcion's one I can't figure out. The drop rate is extremely high, as is the contested catch rate, which those two things to me make no sense.
Yeah, he's a polarizing prospect. He's electric with the ball in his hands, and that's why everyone keeps pushing him up the boards. And I hear people defend the drops, well, they're concentration drops. Those tend to follow players around, you know, and if you're worried about running with the ball before you get the ball, that doesn't lessen at the next level. If anything, you speed that up because the game's that much faster. But people like the explosives can at times outweigh the negatives. So I get the feeling with a player like Casey Concepcion. It'll be interesting to see where the rest of the league stands on him come draft night.
So I know you've talked about this on Barking Browns podcast. What happens if the Browns can't find a trade partner and they take the 6th pick?
Yeah, and you can only play the board that's in front of you, right? So the way I look at it, the Browns might have 3 players that have a convex where its need meets value, you know, at 6. And that could be Carnell Tate, Francis Malinois, you know, Spencer Fano, those, you know, but there's a world in which those 3 players, Malinois goes 3 to the Cardinals, and all of a sudden Fano goes to the Titans and Tate goes to the Giants, and you're sitting there at 6 with your needs kind of off the board. Do you think they're going to reach for need, or do you think that they're going to look at the board and play it in front of them with the best player available? And for me, that would be Caleb Downs in that scenario. If those guys are off the board, and all of a sudden you're just sitting at 6 and there's no dance partner coming up, you have to stick and pick. For me, it's BPA, best player available, and that's Caleb Downs. If I were to look at this entire draft and pick one player out of this draft that I am confident will be an all-pro in this league, it is Caleb Downs. The tape is just that good. And it's not a hard need for the Browns, but it's a low-key need. You know, are you going to let Hickman stop you from getting a potential all-pro safety? You know, Delpit's got 1 year left on his deal. For me, I don't, you know, you're starting to hear the smoke about the Browns potentially moving on from a Myles Garrett and a Denzel Ward. You think Delpit's long for this team as well? If that's the route they're going to go, they're going to build around their guys that are on rookie contracts. In that case, give me Caleb Downs. That eliminates a huge need. He's so instinctive. We, for years as Browns fans, had to sit and watch Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu, and it always felt like those players were sent from the future to ruin my day. Caleb Downs has that exact same type of skill, and he's a master communicator on the back end. And for me, it'd be a no-brainer if you were stuck in that position and had to stick and pick.
All right, so Browns radio analyst Nathan Zagura talking about what he thinks the Browns should do with the 6th pick in the NFL draft.
I would take Carnell Tate, and I wouldn't even think twice about it because this is a scoring league. The strongest correlation between, you know, making the playoffs every year in your conference is to be a top scoring offense. If you're a top 7 scoring offense in your conference, it's like a 90+% correlation to making the playoffs. So that's the most important thing. So I want guys that can score the football. And Carnell Tate, great hands, great route runner, great separation, average 17 yards a catch. So he knows how to use his skills to be a vertical threat. Even if his speed necessarily doesn't jump off the tape, I think his route running is so savvy. His hands are great. Didn't drop a pass last year. Great in contested catches. Will be a quarterback's best friend, and I think that's what we need. I think we need playmakers here.
Yeah, Casey, I couldn't agree more. I'm not sure it's Carnell Tate, but that just look. They haven't drafted a wide receiver before the 3rd round under Andrew Berry. I know they've made trades, but it is a scoring league and it's a passing league, and the Browns need a passing offense to be effective. You need a quarterback and you need wide receivers to do that.
I would take zero issue if the 6th pick came and it was Carnell Tate and they turned that in. I would be ecstatic. The question is he really going to be there at 6? Like that's what it's coming down to. That as we get closer to the draft, you start to feel guys that are in pockets. And it feels like the gap between Carnell Tate and the other receivers from a perception standpoint is moving in different directions. Like, I'm a huge Mekhi Lemon fan. I don't think he's being grouped the same way as Tate because of the frame, because of the downfield explosiveness, because of there's 0 drops, body control. There's so many boxes you could check for Carnell Tate that's going to push him up boards. And the winds feel like they're blowing in a position where there's a chance he might not be on the board at 6. But if he was and they turned that in, that'd be off to a great start to fixing this wide receiver room.
So again, this is something I know you've addressed on your show. How does the stack wide receiver class, if you will, impact the Browns draft strategy? And I don't think it should. Give me an elite wide receiver because you haven't had one, and you need one. And it makes the quarterback better, and it'll make Quinshon Judkins better, and it'll make Harold Fannin better.
For me, this goes part and parcel with the way I'm looking at this draft for Andrew Berry. He had a great draft last year. And you're not going to find a bigger fan of Schwess and Fannin than me. But those are not positions of pillar importance in this league currently. No team's been turned around by an off-ball linebacker and a multifaceted tight end. For me, you have to have a quarterback, you have to have wide receivers, you have to have tackles, defensive ends, and cornerbacks. Andrew Berry inherited 2 of the 5, and he's 0 for 3 on the other ones. And you can't squeeze blood out of a stone. You're not getting your quarterback in this draft unless you hit on someone late and they develop. But you can fix wide receiver in this draft. That's the way I look at this. This is a very deep draft for wide receiver, and I'm 100% with you. If you can get one of those elite playmakers early in the draft, whether it's at 1 or 20 or 6 or 24, you do that. But it does not stop me from double dipping and getting someone else to change the face of this wide receiver room. And if you just look on down the line, whether you pick it 24, 39, 70, 107, there are going to be options there of guys who are going to give this team a different dimension than they currently have. Whether that's a Ted Hurst from Georgia State or someone like Antonio Williams at 70. Out of Clemson, just a technician of a route runner can affect the deep third of the field, or even at 107, if he's still there, someone like Bryce Lance from North Dakota State. You can do that and pair that with a Mekhi Lemon, Carnell Tate, whatever you do early, Casey Concepcion, Omar Cooper. There are so many options, but you can stack this and you can double dip and you can change the trajectory of this wide receiver room in just this draft. And that's something that Andrew Berry needs to do, is start knocking down these pillars of importance for positions that really change the face of your team.
All right, one name that's being tied to the Browns more and more as the draft day gets a little bit closer, Alabama offensive lineman Caden Proctor. Mike Rodak from Bama 24/7 with his thoughts on Proctor, who he saw play all year.
Prototypically, he is a first-round pick. Like, he is everything you want out of size, height, weight, athletic ability. Like, he checks all those boxes. You turn on the film and one thing happens on one play, another thing happens on another play. One game is different than the next. He had kind of that spring 2 years ago where he decided to leave, right after Nick Saban retired. He went back to Iowa. He was at Iowa for a couple months. He decided he wanted to go back to Alabama. I think NFL teams certainly studied that and researched that. And, there's probably a maturity factor that needs to improve from Proctor, where it's just, you're a pro now. Like, you're relied upon to do all these things and be in the right place and, be relied upon as a player. So, again, the physical traits are there. I think the performance on the field and just kind of the overall knowing what to expect every single day out of him is probably what's holding him back from being a slam dunk, top 10 pick. But again, I think NFL teams are going to take a chance on that sort of rare ability in terms of, size. And I think he's, to me, more likely a first-round pick than Ty is.
He was referring to Ty Simpson. That is a huge buyer beware, to me at least, for Caden Proctor. He went to Iowa, which is Kurt Ferentz. That's, we groom offensive linemen for the NFL, and he didn't like it. It would be a hard no, just looking at that.
I could not be more out on Caden Proctor than I currently am. And if we're just talking about just from the play on the field, he's a guard to me. He's a power guard. I don't see the lateral ability. He's a linear athlete, and he is explosive. But I'm not here to besmirch someone. I hope he makes all the money he can in pro football and does all the things he wants to do in life. A man who's that big at the age of 20, that does not reverse course. That typically does. It gets worse. He's going to be battling that, and at some point your body fails. And when you put on the tape, and I dare anyone to do this, put on a tape a grueling game from Alabama, watch that player in the fourth quarter and tell me that's the same player he was in the first. It's just not. And if he gets in the right system and maybe he starts taking things differently and there becomes a more consistent version of him, maybe you can get that. I'm not banking on that. And if that's the name we hear at 6, I pray for the safety of my laptop.
All right. So we've talked about mock drafts. Brian, our producer, sat there and watched me do these, so I did not alter them. I ended up doing 2 of them. I'm gonna run them by you. Nobody would trade what I wanted for 6. I wanted either 9 and 29 from the Chiefs or the Cowboys, 12 and 20. Couldn't get those. Wasn't throwing in 39 for that. So we stuck with what the Browns had. Here's the first one. This was done by the mock draft database. David Bailey was sitting there at 3, and draft me a playmaker, drafted David Bailey from Texas Tech in the first round. The guard from Penn State sitting there at 24, so I took him. I get to the second round, and Caleb Lomu was sitting there. So draft me a wide receiver. Finally took a wide receiver at 70 with Chris Bell, and then I went to Oscar Delp, tight end from Georgia. I looked at that, and I'm like, man, if they get that draft class, Casey, they've improved their team pretty significantly.
Yeah, if you just look at the offensive line, that's a massive upgrade. Vega is viewed by many people as the best overall offensive lineman. Now he plays guard, so positional value might kick him back further, but that'd be a huge get. I'm a huge Lomu guy, so that would be massive. The David Bailey pick, I would be more hesitant on, me personally. I would just go. I like other edges better, but you can't deny what he can do. He can get after quarterbacks, and that affects everything. So if you're able to get someone like that who can be a situational pass rusher early in his career, maybe he develops into a 3-down player. But you could see that. But Delp's a fantastic athlete at tight end to pair with Fan and Bell. That's a guy. If he doesn't have that ACL, he's a first-round pick. I'm hearing from a lot of people that he's a different kind of version of an A.J. Brown. I see kind of an Anquan Bolden with his game, someone you can just get the ball to in easy positions, and he makes even linebackers pay when they come up to tackle him. He's a very punishing player. He'd be someone who the crowd would get behind very easily for the way he extends runs. He dies hard on the field. So it's all about when is he going to be healthy enough to get with it, but he's someone that would vastly improve this wide receiver room.
All right, so I had to do another one because I didn't take any wide receivers early. So here's another one. This was done by Fanspeak. Again, none of the trades that I tried to do with the Chiefs and the Cowboys to acquire additional first-round picks worked. I took Mekhi Lemon, came back at 24, and Sadiq Bey was sitting there. So I went 2 playmakers. Guard is sitting there at 39, so I took Vega at 39. Finally got the tackle, Tinnerton at 70. And then I took Drew Aller, a quarterback from Penn State. We had seen an NFL scout who basically said Penn State didn't do him any favors. Right system, right coach. He thinks he has huge upside. I can absolutely see Todd Monken thinking, I'm that coach.
Yeah, well, first off, let's start with Mekhi Lemon. That's my wide receiver 1.
Yep.
You're going to find a soft spot for me every time. He's a dog. Some people just get caught up in measurables, and it's or you could turn on the tape and see all the plays that he makes and how the measurables never affect him on the field. He's coming up every contested catch, fights for every yard. He's someone when I think about this exercise, and I'd be willing to bet anyone out there listening, if you want to bet me on this, find me. My DMs are always open. I will bet that Mekhi Lemon has more catches in his first 2 years than any other receiver in this draft. That's just who I believe he is. Sadiq is another one. I find it hard to believe he'll get past the Chiefs. I think they could be in that business of upgrading what Kelsey was and getting an athlete like that to pair with Mahomes. But obviously we talked about Vega Ione. I am a huge Caleb Tiernan fan. I think that if you're going to draft a late round tackle, someone in round 3 or later, and he's going to be a starter in this league, I think he's the guy. And I think a lot of people overlook him. That once again, it'll be an arm length conversation. He's a pro, man. Like that's a pro left tackle. I think I'd have zero issue taking him. And even if he's not a day one starter for you, I believe by year 2 he's your starting left tackle. And Aller's like, I can't argue with the scouts assessment. Like there was no development at Penn State for him, and he has all the tools. Can you do that at the pros? Do you have, as long as you have time to develop him, which is something that most quarterbacks aren't afforded when they come in the league. It's like sink or swim. But if you can keep him behind the scenes for a year, maybe 2, maybe you have something there. And for me, that's worth the dart throw.
All right, which of the 2 are you taking? Are you taking the playmakers in the second one, or are you taking more of the offensive and line help on the first one?
I'm going to bank that you got the playmakers in the second one, and I believe Tiernan can be a starting left tackle. Maybe if not right away, but eventually. I think the tools are there, so I would go with the second one.
Yep, that's my favorite one as well. Casey, as always, great stuff, man. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out, the Barking Browns podcast, as well as the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Lance Reisland, film breakdown, video analysis. Sports4CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Time for film breakdown, video analysis. Let's welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer at cleveland.com. Lance, we continue with positions in the upcoming draft the Browns might be interested in. Today, a little bit of a sneaky one, tight end. We know Todd Monken knows how to use them from his time in Baltimore.
Yeah, here's the thing. So they obviously everybody knows about Harold Fannin, and then they re-signed Whiteheart, and then they added Stoll. So Whiteheart and Stoll give them the ability to put their hand on the ground. So if you think about a tight end, traditional tight end, that's what Stoll is, especially what Whiteheart is. Stoll can move, though. He's played some fullback as well. Monken likes to do those things. So I think with signing those 2, they're going to get a guy who has a similar skill set to Harold Fannin. Now, we're going to look at 3 tight ends that have great movement skills. All the 3 of these guys are not particularly stout in the run game yet. And then we'll look at a guy who's the best traditional tight end, I think, in this year's draft, in a kid out of Stanford. So there's some really good tight ends, in my opinion, especially this new age tight end where they're going to move, they're going to be position flexible, and they're going to be expected to do a lot of different things.
All right, so these are day 2, day 3 guys, not first round. So second, third, fourth, fifth, and on. First guy you have, Eli Stowers from Vanderbilt. What do you see with him?
Well, long guy, this is a guy who does not block very well at all, but this is a guy with tremendous skill set. He can play in the sky. You see him here just running routes, slot routes. What I like about him is his pure athleticism. He's 6'3", he's about 245. He's a guy who's, again, very much like Harold Fannin coming out of college, where he's more of a receiver than he is a blocker, but he can block enough, in my opinion. And people always say, well, I haven't seen it on film. And I haven't seen a ton of it on film either, but his athleticism and his toughness tell me he can do it better than he did it. But when you talk about in space, obviously Kenyon Sadiq, the kid out of Oregon, is going to be the first tight end off the board. Eli might be the second, and I think he would last till day 2. And if the Browns, get what they need, they have a lot of picks in that top 100. Eli Stowers might be the guy. He's everybody likes Eli Stowers. I like him too. He reminds me a lot of Harold Fannin in his skill set.
All right, good look at Stowers there for Vanderbilt. All right, the second of the 4 guys that we're going to look at, Oscar Delp from Georgia, and I would remind everyone, Todd Monken has been at Georgia. he can get inside information from Kirby Smart on Delp that nobody else is going to get?
Well, Delp is an outstanding athlete. You'll see him here in motion. He's going to run a real wheel route off a quick screen action. Very good receiver. Again, very much like Eli Stowers, a little bit better. You're going to see him here on an inside stick knot 8 route in the red zone. Big, long guy, 6'4", 6'5". Again, not the best blocker yet, but a guy that, the things he can do, you can't teach. The things he struggles with, you can. And I just think he's an outstanding athlete. And like I said, the Browns of what they've done with Stoll and with Whiteheart, they're now able to go get a tight end, in my opinion, who they think fits their skill set and ability to get in the seam. Oscar Delp is a guy I'm probably going to be around. I have him way higher on the board than most. I really like him. He'll probably be around day 3. I have him as a day 2 grade. I think he's outstanding. Again, big vertical threat, long body, good catch radius, great body control, spatial awareness. One thing he's going to have to do, he's going to have to learn to put his hand on the ground a little bit and be able to block. But the good thing Monken does is not going to make him do that a ton, but you want to be able to do enough to dictate what the defense has to do.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at with Todd Monken knowing Kirby Smart. He'll find out. Kirby, does he have that in him? And he will get an honest answer from Kirby Smart.
Yeah, and people say, well, why would you make him do that? Well, really what it comes down to is when you get these athletic tight ends, you want them to be able to block enough that it forces the defense to put that extra linebacker in the box or bring that safety down in the box because they can't stop the run. Then you're going to get man coverage, and then you have the advantage where you get a guy like Harold Fanning Jr., Oscar Delp, Eli Stowers. You get them matched up against big linebackers and safeties that just can't cover them. But they have to be able to put their hand on the ground just enough so it gets defenses out of nickel and pass coverage.
And it's what we've talked about. It's what Todd Monken does. That would be a mismatch, and that's what he's going to be looking for. He's going to try to find players that he can create mismatches with in his offense. That's what the Ravens' offensive system was.
Yeah, and if you think about what the Browns' defense has been in terms of trying to find matchups and trying to get Myles Garrett, same thing with Monken on offense. He's going to do his best. This is the players over plays concept that I talk about ad nauseum, right? The ability to find matchups for your best players in space. And sometimes that's the tight end. I expect Harold Fanning to just have a tremendous year, huge year, all-pro year, because they're going to force feed him because they're going to find matchups for him all over the field.
All right, the third guy that we're going to look at, Michael Trigg from Baylor. What do you see with Trigg?
Well, he's he's an athlete. You see him second from the top thing. He's going to run a little over route here. This guy is a tremendous talent. Again, it comes down to this ability to block in line, not his strength. But you can see him here, just a broken play, gets up the field, scramble drill, and then you see him go high point the ball. This is another incredible athlete that can move. He can play fullback. He can play outside. He's got to be able to block enough. His receiving, his skill set is through the roof. For me, he's the best athlete, pure athlete tight end in this draft. I think he's besides Kenyon Sadiq, they're the same thing. But this guy's actually bigger, longer. Even though Kenyon Sadiq's more of a receiver, this is the guy who I think you can teach to put his hand on the ground too. And again, just a mismatch for linebackers and safeties.
When you look at him, is he the type of guy that you split out as well? He looked kind of lean.
Yeah, so he's 250, but yeah, you can put him, you can split him out, put him in the slot. This goes down into my weapon category, right? Where a guy who's positionless. Obviously, he's got a tight end frame, but you think about another guy like Jeremiah Love. I don't worry about what position they play. I worry about what matchups they can create. And this is the guy that he can play outside, he can play in the slot, traditional tight end, out of the backfield. Just a really good raw athlete who has a lot of potential, and his best football is in front of him.
Did you say he's 250?
Yeah, he's in that 240, 250 range, yes.
So you get a safety on him, that's a mismatch from the physical strength of it.
Yeah, so you're talking 6'3", 6'4", 250. He's too athletic for linebackers and too long for safeties. And that's, once again, if you can get him, if he can put his hand on the ground a little bit and block, now you got to go run, stop the run. And he's just, like you said, he's got a lot of receiver skill set in him. He's willing to block. He just needs to be taught a little bit more. And in college, these college coaches are no longer prepping these guys for the NFL. They got to win too. So this is a guy who's kind of like a ball of clay too. He'll only get better. Can't teach that athleticism this kid has. Michael Trigg is a steal on day 2 or day 3, in my opinion.
All right, so the fourth and final tight end that we're going to look at is the guy you alluded to, a traditional tight end, Sam Roush from Stanford. What do you see with Roush?
Well, depending on what they do with Whiteheart and anything, you're going to see here, he's not the most explosive guy. This is a traditional tight end. He'll be a guy that's attached to the tackle. You'll see him here on a corner route. He's good. He can catch the ball. Don't get me wrong, but this is the best traditional tight end in the draft this year. A guy who's not going to split out and play receiver. He can play some fullback for you. He can move a little bit. He's a much better athlete than people think he is. But this is a really tough guy. This is the guy that, once again, put his hand on the ground. He'll block that 5 technique. He'll block down. He'll reach a big end. Big physical kid, that 260 range. Again, not a guy super athlete, but a guy, if you're looking for a tough tight end, and Todd Monken likes 21 personnel. He's kind of going back to that old school football. So this is a guy that might be around day 3, and you never know with Todd Monken. He loves his tight ends. I like this guy a lot, just like his toughness and like what he does in the run game as well as the pass game. What you see here is not what he does best. He's a run blocker first.
That's what I was going to ask. How is his run blocking?
Yeah, he's a much better. He's a traditional, much better run blocker than he is in space tight end. But he's functional enough in the pass game where you have to account for him. And people say, what does that mean? It means when you go into the game plan, he's not a guy you worry about beating you over top, but you worry about him on third downs. You worry about him off play action, things that coaches like to do. So he has that functional ability. But what they want him to do is put his hand on the ground, block in the run game, and then catch the little naked boot routes on the edge, like so many tight ends in the NFL do. And this guy is really good at it.
Yeah, it's almost like that's the guy that's going to chip and release. And you're saying he's enough of a threat that if you get the ball in his hands, it's a problem for the defense.
Yeah, and it's that fun, it's all about what you need. The first 3 guys are guys who are mismatches. This is a guy you get in thing and you go, all right, we're going to run the ball. Then all of a sudden you get 8, 9 in the box. He's functional enough to run a corner route, which you saw on that touchdown. He's functional enough to get in the flat after he chips on the defensive end. He can do a lot of different things. It just depends what you look for. In this traditional tight end, like everything else in all sports, everything comes back around, and the traditional tight end went away, and now you're seeing it come back just a little bit, especially with guys like Todd Monken, who understand what a traditional tight end, what a pain in the butt it is for a defense.
How surprised would you be if the Browns don't select a tight end somewhere in this draft?
I'd be very, very shocked because they have Harold Fannin, but after Harold Fannin, they don't have any guys who can threaten in the pass game. Stahl and Whiteheart are solid, don't get me wrong, and they'll be glue guys, and they're very important, and they like their role. They're not guys who want the ball. They're guys who thrive and star in their role. I'd be shocked if they don't go out and get a Michael Trigg, Eli Stowers, and Oscar Delp. In fact, I'd actually be shocked if they don't take Oscar Delp. I think he's perfect for what Todd Monken wants to do.
You mentioned the guys, Stahl and Whiteheart. When Todd Monken talks about wanting to be physical and a team nobody wants to play, which he mentioned earlier in the week when he talked, that's kind of what he's referring to. He wants guys that want to play at the line of scrimmage, and those 2 guys are more than willing to do that.
Well, yeah, and you have guys who want to play at the line of scrimmage, and you have a mindset. So everybody says, what's the offensive philosophy going to be? The mindset or the pillars, he said, are always the same. And it's physicality. It's physicality in everything you do. Now, the thing that I want to see, Dave, is I can't wait to watch practice because that's the one thing the Browns have not done. They have not been physical in practice. And I just, once again, I'm older, but I just think it's really hard to be physical in a game when you haven't calloused yourself to be physical in practice. It doesn't mean you have to be physical all for 3 hours. But there's got to be sessions in there where you get after each other a little bit. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I think Todd Monken's going to do that a little bit more. I believe, the injuries the Browns have had, I think a lot of injuries have to do with the lack of acclimation getting ready for the season. Because when the game starts, these guys are all going to play 100 miles per hour. But you got to get them playing 100 miles per hour enough in practice so their body gets used to it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think we're going to see a different training camp and different things from Todd Monken, without question. Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff, man. Appreciate the time, the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Make sure you check out Lance Reisland. Cleveland.com and The Plain Deal are always really good and insightful film breakdown and video analysis. We're going to take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, Nic Nemeth, a local guy who is a TNA Wrestling star. Straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Sports4CLE continues. We turn our attention to professional wrestling and an event going on at the Wolstein Center this weekend tomorrow, April 11th. It is TNA Wrestling's Rebellion Showcase. Let's welcome in Nic Nemeth, former world champion, Cleveland native, who will be wrestling in the event at the Wolstein Center tomorrow. Nick, tell us a little bit about this event, what folks can expect.
Oh, man, it's going to be great. First of all, pro wrestling is my favorite thing in my life. My dad took me when I was 5 years old out to the Richfield Coliseum to see WWF at the time, long time ago. And it just got me started for the love of this wrestling job. And I've spent over 20 years now in the business, repping Cleveland anytime I can, but all over the world doing what I do. And now we get a chance to bring this great company, TNA Wrestling, on a big resurgence. We just 2.5 months now, we've had this relationship with the AMC channel. Thursday nights, 9 o'clock. We're all over the world. People are checking out our show and getting to see how awesome the talent are. And coming home to Cleveland to have this big pay-per-view match, not just stacked with all our titles on the line, and not just knowing that the Hardys are there with the tag titles on the line against the system, knowing that I get to perform in my backyard, my hometown where I grew up, and somehow that's not the biggest moment for me. We add one more piece to this. In my corner for my match against AJ Francis, TNA Rebellion, April 11th, Saturday night. In my corner, legendary Cleveland Brown, Bernie frickin' Kosar in my corner for this match. So not only is this awesome for me to be able to come perform and show what I do to all my friends, family, ex-girlfriends from the past, rub it in their face a little bit. I get absolute hero of mine, Cleveland legend and Browns legend, Bernie Kosar, out there with me. It doesn't get any bigger for this night.
How'd you convince Bernie to be in your corner for the match?
That's a great question, because at first I was like, hey, it'd be cool if I could somehow find a way to get Bernie to be in the crowd, just so I can, steal the show for him, much like he used to lead the Browns to the big wins and shows and games when I was a kid and growing up watching. And everything he's done for us, Browns fans and the city of Cleveland, and Cleveland's been behind him every step of the way. But now I get him, I was just hoping to get him front row or close so he could watch me do what I do, and hopefully I can entertain him like he did to me. But now, a couple of steps in, I was like, hey, what about, maybe you could be in my corner, and if something went down, you could have my back. And I was fully ready to be like, no, I'll be there. And that's why he goes, yes, I'm there in a heartbeat. I'll be in your corner. And that blows me away already. This is absolute Cleveland Browns legend, Bernie Kosar. And now I have him in my corner. So all the titles are on the line. The Hardys are fighting for the tag titles. But I got AJ Francis, former NFL player, going one-on-one against me in my backyard with friends, family there. And now Bernie Kosar watching my back to make sure everything goes smooth and the ref can call it down the middle.
All right, so you're wearing a Kent State hat. I know you were a three-time Mid-American Conference Wrestling champion at
3.9, but who's counting?
Then you also won a couple of national championships at St. Ed's. How special is it to be back in your hometown for this event?
It's huge, man. Growing up here, I went to St. Pat's. I wrestled there with a bunch of my friends. Went on to St. Ed's, where I was pretty good, but I was nowhere on the level of this team. I think the 97 team that I was on, 1997, were national champions. I think we won it twice in the 4 years that I was there. Absolutely incredible team of killers, MMA guys, went on to championships. They went on to national titles in college. So many time champions, All-Americans. We just had this murderer's row of absolute awesome dudes. So I got to get better by being out there with them, and then got to get a little bit better when I went to Kent State and ended up breaking the record there for all-time wins. And the whole reason I was focused on winning that record and breaking it was that somewhere down the line, Vince McMahon could Google my name and go, well, he's only 5'11" and 200 pounds, but you know what? He's the all-time winningest wrestler in Kent State history. Let's give him a shot. And because Kurt Angle, one of my heroes, did so well, they gave me a shot, and the rest is history.
Yeah, 2004 to 2023 with WWE, multiple national world champ a couple of times. I got to ask you this. You're wearing an MMS T-shirt. You're wearing your Kent State hat. You always represent Cleveland. Favorite Cleveland sports memory?
Oh, man. You know, I'm not going to use one of the ones that we all use for everything. And I'm sure not going to say the 0-16 parade. I'm not going to say anything like that. I went to the old Cleveland Stadium for a Cleveland Indians game and got to meet Greg Swindell before the game, and I was a child. And I remember that. I thought that was awesome. But I've been out there sitting. I went to the coldest game in maybe 20 years in Browns history 3 years ago, and my friends and I, we all took a picture with our shirts off out there because you couldn't even sit down, or you open a beer and before you could sip out of it, it was frozen over the top. So I won't use all our normal sports moments, but having things like that happen and just having those memories in a positive way. And come on, are you kidding me? Bernie getting played on the radio as the Browns are going to the AFC Championship game. I will never forget listening to that on the radio while turning the TV down so we could hear the call by our guys on the Cleveland team.
Nick, appreciate the time. Again, it's TNA's Rebellion Showcase tomorrow, Saturday, the 11th, live at the Wolstein Center. You can watch it on pay-per-view. You can catch it on TNA Plus. You will be there. Bernie Kosar will be in your corner. Best of luck. Appreciate the time.
Thank you so much. It's going to be a blast. Cleveland, let's come out and check this out. The show's going to rule. All the titles on the line, and Bernie frickin' Kosar is there. Let's go.
All right, Nic Nemeth, Cleveland native, will be wrestling at the TNA Rebellion Showcase tomorrow, Wolstein Center. Make sure you check it out. Get it on pay-per-view, TNA Plus as well. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. Have a great weekend, everybody. We will see you back here Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.